Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's Sunday Conversation here on Big Country Politics. I am Manny Diaz. Our special guest this week is District 71 State Representative Mr. Stan Lambert. Mr. Lambert, it has been some time since we last spoke, but as always, it's nice to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me again, Manny. It's good to see you, and Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year to you as well. So there was a number of laws that went into effect effective January 1. We're going to kind of go through a few of these, and of course you saw these first and forehand there on the floor. Senate Bill 17 is something that bans DEI initiatives at public institutions of higher education. We've seen a lot of this. Currently it's the Harvard University president who's kind of been linked to a lot of the hiring because of DEI. Tell me, what does this particular ban or what this particular bill does?
I think what this bill does is it tries to eliminate some of the discrimination and the non-inclusivity that a lot of major colleges and universities have taken the approach to make the DEI program a lot more segregated and divisive. And I think that's where we decided as a legislature to come in and make some important changes in terms of our institutions of higher education here in Texas. So the original goals were not being met. I was watching or reading something about the University of Texas is going to rename their program a different program. So some of the good things that were happening within that program that don't allow for discrimination or exclusivity are still they're going to try to implement and keep as part of their program. So every university will probably have to deal with this in a different way. It's not something that locally that we've heard much from our local universities and in terms of issues or problems that they were dealing with. So this may be happening at much of our larger universities across the country and certainly in Texas.
Yeah. Senate Bill 10, this is the cost of living adjustment for the Texas teacher retirement system. Now, you have had your, as a former, AISD board member, I imagine you saw this on an annual basis and trying to get things together with all that. How big was this? How much did you kind of see from voters saying, you know what, this was needed, or perhaps saying something the other way around?
Well, I believe when the amendment or the change in the Constitution that was required in November for voters to weigh in on this particular issue was one of the highest amendments that passed in terms of overall approval from Texas voters. The cost of living adjustment for many teachers has not occurred in the last 20 years. Some teachers had not received one since 2004. And with inflation and all the other increases in terms of just living cost, it was necessary. It was certainly overdue. It was time for us to take action. The state had a good surplus to begin with. As you know, we had about a $33 billion surplus to start out this legislative session. So the timing was right. Serving on Pensions and Investments and Financial Services Committee, this bill actually came through my committee and our committee. So it was very important for us to get this done, to make sure that our educators realized how we value the sacrifices and the contributions they made while they were actively involved in educating our public school students around the state.
The school voucher program and the school choice, this is a big topic in the special session, and
right.
Obviously, it went a different direction than probably what Governor Abbott wanted it to. Do you foresee this being brought up again in the future?
Oh, I do. I think it's something the governor has staked a lot of his political capital in terms of trying to get something passed. We've kind of reached the point of no return as far as trying to do anything legislatively. As far as we know, we don't know for sure. He could call us back for another special session before the March primaries. The voucher issue is really something that I think a lot of us, particularly in rural areas, have had a position on for a long, long time, and that is that there's only a certain amount of money in education in the budget. Even though our budget has grown, even though Texas' economy continues to do very well and adds additional revenue like the $33 billion, we can't always count on that excess revenue to be there every 2 years that we go into session. And so with only a limited pot of money, if you create a whole new education system that starts siphoning away funds from that current system, which is our public education system and charter schools, eventually the dollars are going to decrease and rural schools will be affected the most. And I think that's why a lot of us that serve in the rural areas have taken such a strong position against vouchers.
Last question before we go to break. Why do you think Governor Abbott is pushing so hard for this? And is there enough from the folks in the rural areas, the rural representation, to counter what Governor Abbott wants to accomplish with school choice?
Well, let me answer the second question first. Out of the 21 who voted against the voucher, 5 of those representatives have decided not to run again. So there will be new faces in those districts, and very likely could be pro-voucher type representation. So the numbers continue to dwindle. We're down to maybe 15 or 16 of us that would probably, if a vote were taken today, would still vote against the voucher program being implemented. I don't know what the governor's long-term strategy is. I've heard a lot of different scenarios. It has something to do with national politics and the direction that the Republican Party at the national level wants to go and take in regards to public education. I'm not ready to say our public schools are failing. Do we need to improve? Absolutely. We've got areas that do need to be improved. But I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think public education needs to be fully funded. We can't get the teacher raises we need and the additional school funding unless there's a voucher component attached to that. And those of us who have stood strong on this issue, I think will continue to remain very strong.
All right. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, more with District 71 State Representative Stan Lambert, right here on our Sunday Conversation on Big Country Politics. Stick with us.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Welcome back to our Sunday Conversation here on Big Country Politics. This week our special guest is District 71 State Representative Mr. Stan Lambert. Mr. Lambert, we were talking a lot about some of the certain laws that are going into effect, that went into effect January 1. Tell us. Let's switch gears and let's talk a little bit about the crisis on the border. I did an interview a few months ago, and a certain reporter told me it's not a crisis. It's kind of how you want to envision it. However you put it, he just said it wasn't a crisis. I think if you ask people on here in Texas and certainly in the border counties, they may think otherwise or say otherwise. Right now, there is certainly Governor Abbott is working to pretty much make it a misdemeanor for crossing the border illegally. The Biden administration has said, we are going. If this does go into effect, we are going to go after the state of Texas. Tell me about this and how you foresee this playing out.
Well, I think it will play out in the court system. There will be countersuits compared to what the state of Texas is trying to accomplish, and that is sending a message to anyone that is thinking about crossing the border illegally that if they are found to be in the state of Texas illegally, then our local law enforcement have the jurisdiction and the authority to arrest them and to find a way to transport them back to the border and see them cross back over into Mexico, or maybe in Arizona cross over into Mexico as well. But in the state of Texas, we certainly have limitations on what that law can provide. There was a lot of concern about the racial profiling that this might create. We probably are not going to get very far into the implementation of this legislation being enacted before the Department of Justice probably is going to come down to Texas and countersue and file some type of restraint from being able to implement this law. So I think the governor is trying to do every possible thing. I've been to the border 3 times, Manny, and the last visit I made was with the director of Department of Public Safety, DPS, with the Texas National Guard. And in their conversations with me as just a representative, they said, we meet with the governor's staff every week. And every week the governor's staff is saying, what else can we do? what are some other options that we can utilize that are within the law to try to mitigate or at least stem the flow of the migrants that are coming across. And DPS and Texas National Guard, of course, working in conjunction with our Border Patrol agents, basically are saying we're doing everything we possibly can do. Mm-hmm. The numbers have gotten to the point now where it's almost insurmountable. We still have a humanitarian crisis. Mm-hmm. We still have issues in terms of the fentanyl and the drug trafficking and the human trafficking that is coming across. I kind of ask the question too, what else can we do? And when the people that are actually boots on the ground, that are working this every day, 24/7, 365 days a year, are running out of solutions or running out of options because we have no involvement from our federal government, then all we can do is just continue to try to do what we can with Lone Star, the Operation Lone Star, continue to try to build barriers to try to mitigate and stem the flow. But it is a crisis, no matter what news media or organization tries to call it. It is a crisis that's occurring on our southern border, and we're trying to do everything we can as a state to protect our citizens, our Texans, to be secure and safe in our own environment. So there's a lot going on down there, I can assure you.
I bet. This week, one of our reporters, Tobin Smith, he produced a piece on a young man here in Abilene who overdosed on fentanyl. And you know, it's those are always so sad. They're sad stories because it involves, you know, youth, and it just involves just a drug that's overcoming America and it just overwhelming the Texas-Mexico border. Tell me, as we enter 2024, when you and your fellow legislators head back to Austin, do y'all foresee increasing legislation or creating more legislation to combat the war on drugs, especially when it involves such a potent drug like fentanyl?
Well, I think we have addressed it to some degree in this last session where we tried to redefine what fentanyl poisoning actually is. It's something that should be more of a felony than just a misdemeanor. So it's strengthening laws that would try to find the source, the dealers, and where the fentanyl is being distributed and how it's getting into our local communities and into the hands of our young people, I think needs to be enforced, and we'll try to do anything we can to add more legislation, I think, to try to prevent that from happening. The mental health resources that are available through our schools and through other local agencies, we're continuing to invest in mental health throughout the state, trying to find out what problems these young people are having before they take the drug, before they find out later on, which sometimes, as you said, is not a very good outcome. Mm-hmm. When fentanyl gets mixed in with other drugs and they don't realize. Disguised. That's right, because we're seeing death occur, and it's becoming more the leading indicator of deaths as far as our teenage population. So it's a problem that's not just happening in Texas; it's happening all over the country, and probably is going to need solutions that have more of a national impact. So I'm saying we need the help of Washington, D.C. as well as Austin in order to combat this terrible outcome that's occurring in many of our youth.
Stan, appreciate your time once again, sir.
Thank you, Manny.
Yes, sir. Best of luck to you in Austin and anything that you do down there, because that's I can only imagine the rat race that is down there.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you and to represent this district. Has always been a great, humbling experience for me, and I appreciate it very much.
Most definitely. Well, for District 71 Texas State Representative Stan Lambert, I am Manny Diaz. This has been another Sunday Conversation right here on Big Country Politics. Until next time, God bless.